policy in that part of the world is fraught and dangerous and conspiratorial and occasionally more seemingly far-fetched than you ought to be able to believe. And it is precisely because it is so fraught and so fragile and so dangerous that it was more than just news. It was actually kind of scary in 2004 during the George W. Bush administration when we learned how policy toward that part of the world was being made inside the Bush White House. Rick Perlstein reported at the time for the Village Voice that the top Middle East staffer on George W. Bush's National Security Council had held secret formal consultations with apocalyptic Christian groups who wanted to make sure that American policy toward Israel was doing everything possible to bring about the second coming of Christ on earth. These groups wanted the Bush administration to make sure that the borders of Israel lined up exactly with what they thought the Bible said it needed to be in order to bring about the apocalypse. Seriously. So the top guy on Near East and North African affairs for the National Security Council met with the apocalypse seekers, met with these Christian apocalypse groups to assure them that it was biblically okay for the Bush administration to favor Israel giving up the Gaza Strip because, he explained to them, there is a specific way to read the Old Testament that shows that that would be all right and it wouldn't get in the way of the coming rapture. Jesus wouldn't mind. So Rick Perlstein, in 2004, he does this reporting. He finds out that this is going on in the Bush White House. He calls the National Security Council spokesman to ask him what is going on. And the initial response to Mr. Perlstein is, why would the White House comment on that? Quote, when asked whose job it is in the Bush administration to study the Bible to discern what parts of Israel were or were not acceptable sacrifices for peace, National Security Council spokesman Frederick Jones said that even his previous statements in this conversation had been off the record. It's an amazing thing, right? I mean, everybody's religious beliefs are their own. And by definition in this country, nobody's religious beliefs are better than anybody else's. Everybody gets to decide what they believe. And if you believe that getting every single Jew in the world physically inside Israel and making sure that the national boundaries of Israel are exactly what you believe is prescribed by a specific part of the Bible, if you think that's the way that human beings can start the apocalyptic rapture and the end of the world and the four horsemen and all the rest of it, then God bless you. That is what you believe. It does, however, become a news story and conceivably a matter of some debate when your belief that that's what you need to do ends up driving U.S. foreign policy toward that theological aim. And when the people who make foreign policy in this country are consulting with you about what the United States ought to do abroad, then yes, 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 that is news. It's amazing. The George W. Bush administration was really amazing. I cannot wait until the National Archives someday finally takes over the Bush Presidential Library in Texas and we'll finally get an actual exhibit or a diorama or something about that part of the Bush foreign policy. That part where it wasn't just an accident that we were almost bringing about the end of the world. It was the point. That was the strategy we were trying to.